So here we go with section 1. It's essentially in G major. There is a little bit of G mixolydian in there at one point, but for the most part it's G major. And section 1 is... Okay, so that's top E, and we'll go in 7, 8, 10, 8. And then we're going to do a hammer and a pull from 7 to 8 and back before crossing over to 10 on the B. Okay. Okay, back to the 7 on the E, and then we come back to the B string and we're going to play 10, 8, 7, 8, 10. Before crossing back to the E and playing 7, 8, and then a full bend from the 8, which is then cut off at the top of the bend, using the side of your right hand. Well, your picking hand, could be left-handed. Okay, so... Okay, so the only real thing to watch with this is, I mean, I'm playing this in the kind of the classical position. I start off in this classical position, you know, with thumbs not peeping over, fingers fairly parallel to the frets. And of course you could play that in a more bluesy position, a more casual position, but that's just how it works for me. But in that case, you've got to watch this final bend, or the bend. You know, it's a full bend, you only get a split second to get this, and it's got to be right to pitch, and it's got to be cut off. So just really watch that. It's quite easy to fall short and play the bend a little flat. Okay? Okay, section 2. Okay, so basically from where you pretty much were for section 1, get your third finger, slide up to 12 on the B. Cross over to 10 and then 12 on the E. Replut the 12 and the 10 and the 12. Okay, so if we put that together. Cut that note off and really listen closely. I mean, if you listen to the track, there's a lot of subtle cut-offs, and you know, some notes are sustained, some notes are cut off, and it's really worth watching that. You know, it's really going to help the performance and the flow of the piece. Okay. So just before I move up now to fret 14 on the E, I just cut that 12 off. There you go. And then it's into this half bend. It's a slow half bend. So half bend means it's the equivalent of 1 fret if you're unsure. So bending 14 half should sound like a 15. Okay, so it's a half bend, slow, and then it's cut off at that peak. So we go again with the right hand, side of the right hand, picking hand. Okay, shift back while that's cut off, and keep the string nice and clean, you know, so it's not scruffy sounding. Shift back into that original 12-10 position. So you're going to go. And that was a 12, 10, both notes cut off, 12 cut off, 10 cut off, and then a 12 pulled off to 10, and then a 12 again. Pretty simple stuff, but just watch those little nuances, you know, really going to help the flow. So here's that whole section. And there's a little bit of a slide off from that note. Okay, section 3 begins on fret 7 on the E, and you're going to let the slide off from section 2, kind of, you're going to let that 7 take over that slide, so it's a slide off. You don't want to come too far down, you don't want to go to a direct fret position, you're not trying to sound another note, you just want the flow of that 12 coming off and then take over with the 7. So you'll probably be sliding off with your third finger, begin section 3 with your first, so it's kind of So here we go, section 3, we're going to play 7, 10, and then I'll repluck the 10 and slide down to 8. Now just watch that, because it's a little, you know, your little finger can be a little, you know, a little bit weak, so just watch that you get a nice clean slide. Okay, that follows on into 7, 5. Cross over to the B and play 8, 6, 5. And it's this note that makes it Mixolydian. It just comes out of the G major slightly and puts in a flattened 7th, if you're interested in that. Anyway, I won't go into that too much, so I'll put that together. Okay, we then go back to 8 on the high E. I'm going to pull off from the 8 to the 7 to the 5 before crossing over to the 8 on the B, and down to the 6 and the 5 again. Okay, so I'll put all that together so far. And then cross over with my little finger to fret 7 on the G. Little finger because I'm shifting down a fret position. Okay, that was 7, 5, 4. And that 4 is going to begin a series of half bends that are bend and release. Okay, kind of fits in with the beat. Like that. Okay. Now the next part is just a whole section that's exactly the same as the first part. It does all this again. Okay, then we come to the next part. This is where we get the variation, and we're going to go. Okay, so we've landed at 5 on the B. We're going to get our second finger, slide to 8 on the B, and then back to 5, still all on the B, of course, with your first finger. So that will give us. So it's a slide up, but then just a move back. Okay, then get your third finger, slide to 8 on the E, and then get your second finger and play 8 on the B. Okay. And now we're going to get the third finger, slide from the 8 to 10 on the E, and then back to the 8 on the B with the first finger. And then finally, we're going to go from 10 to 12 on the E, and then back again to the 8 on the B with the first finger. So okay, now to this section. This gave me a lot of grief when I was a kid learning this song. This was my nemesis for a time. I just found this section really tricky. Okay, fortunately I can do it now, but you know, it gave me a lot of grief, so don't be surprised if this is a little fiddly. So I'll just play the section slow. Okay. So we've got a series of these chord shapes. It's essentially going from G to C, but you know, I'm not going to go through all the chord names. It's too long-winded. You can work them out for yourself if you're really bothered. It's just good. It's all within G major, and it's, you know, a nice set of harmonies going on there. Now, basically, what I'm doing here is very much like an open D shape. Well, it is an open D shape, except I'm just playing the 3 shapes. The 3 strings. I'm not playing the open 4th as you would with the D. But at this fret position, it's G. During standard tuning, this becomes a G major. But I'm going to play it with fingers, instead of 1, 2 and 3 as you'd usually play a D, I'm going to use fingers 2, 3 and 4. And that's purely preparing for the next section. The finger's going to fall into place nicely if I do that. So I've got fret 7 on the G with my second finger. I've got fret 7 on the E with my third finger, and I've got fret 8 on the B with my little finger. I'm going to strum all 3 strings, and then I'm going to come back to this note, the fret 7 on the G. I'm going to slide up 2 frets. I'm going to sound both the notes. Okay, so we hear the 7, we hear the 9, before it falls into this shape, which is basically leaving my second finger at the 9, which I've just slid to, and then also putting the first finger on the E and the B at fret 8, forming that chord shape there, striking all 3 again. So I'll put that together, we go. Okay, I then go back to that G shape, but with the more, well, I should say D shape really, it's more familiar to as a D. But I'm using the traditional 1, 2, 3 fingers. Okay, so I get this. Now over the years I've shown this to different people, and sometimes people have come back to me with different fingerings that work for them. So just experiment with what works for you. I initially found it very difficult to fall into this D shape with those fingers, but it doesn't take that long, and it makes the next bit feel nice and efficient, But play around, see what works for you. But anyway, there's that part. Okay, we're then going to go into this hybrid pick section. Now hybrid picking, for those of you who don't know, is where you use the plectrum and some of your fingers with your right hand, or what's the point, your picking hand. So you can get kind of, well in this case, the plectrum is going to be hitting the D string, while my second finger can vary depending on the piece, depending on your style, but my second finger is going to get the B string. And I'm going to get this series of harmonies here. We're going to go, make sure you can see my right hand. Okay, so we've got 10 on the D, second finger, 10 on the B with your third finger, and again, like I say, just pluck those. And then I'm going to shift, second finger is going to go down to the 9 on the D, and the first finger is going to get the 8 on the B. Okay, I then come back to the 2 10s that we just did. I go, same thing really, but fret 12, same picking idea. That's going to slide off. Okay, it's going to be taken over by a G5 chord down at the bottom, but so that's what the slide off's kind of moving to. But if I just put the bit we've just done, and that's then taken over, like I say, with the G5, an open G5 because it's got an open note in there. It's fret 3 on strings on the E and the B, first finger flattened, but also hitting the open G. And then we hit another version of it where we just bring in a unison note. We get the same G, but played at fret 5 on the D string. So it's the same note, a little bit thicker. It just thickens out that sound. So we hit once with the 3 strings, the E, the B, and the G. And then we add that third finger to fret 5 on the D and include that string. Okay. So when you play this section, you probably physically are going to consider this as kind of a section before you then move into the hybrid picking part. Rhythmically though, you probably want to put the first 2 hybrid pick notes, the 2 10s, you want to consider those to be the end of this. Because it just seems to fall naturally as the timing, the groupings of the notes, the grouping of the notes, it kind of flows better if you consider that to be the end of that section. So you get this, and then the last 3 hybrid pick sections form, another section, and then obviously the 2 G5s at the end. Again, I've seen quite a bit of variation in how these 2 G5s could be played. I suppose the whole piece could be played in different places, but that's where I find the best. So, final time, here we go. More smoothly. Okay, there we go. That's the troublesome part over with, hopefully. Here we go, next part. So we're kind of down here, down at fret 3 and 5. Second finger on the G, slide up to 9. Cross over to 8 on the B, first finger. And then third finger is going to bend the 10 on the B, 2 full bends. Okay. We're going to come back to the 10 and the 8. So the unbent 10 and the 8 on the B. Cross over to the 9, on the G. Now obviously I'm using the third finger here, as you can see. That's again getting myself ready for the section that's coming up. So now we're here, G, first finger, 7th fret, I'm going to hammer from the 7 to the 9, shift back up and drop down a string, and we're going to hammer and pull, still fingers 1 and 3, hammer and pull, fret 8, 10, cross back over to the fret 9 on the G with your third finger, give that a pluck, and then just repeat what you've just done. So the hammer 7 to 9, cross the string, drop down a fret, hammer and pull. Okay, so and it's a nice little exercise, that. You know, it's a good little exercise anyway. Just watch that you keep the strings dampened enough. Could get a little bit messy, so just watch out for that bit. Okay, then we get this little chromatic descent. First finger, 7, 6, 5. This is still on the G. Okay. Now the section that's coming up now, really quite easy to play when you're just playing this free time and you're not playing to a track. So let me show you the bit I mean before I explain fully. You just have to watch the timing on this part. The phrasing almost seems to go out of time. It's got a deliberate sense of being rushed, as if the notes you are trying to catch up and not lose track of the beat. But it all falls into place as you hit the end of the phrase. Okay, so here we go. We've done the descent, and then same finger, it's going to slide up to 7 and then just play back to the 5. Then same string, third finger is going to go from the 7 to the 9, but then back to the 7 with the first finger. Okay. Okay, following the same idea. Now the third finger is going to go from the 9 to the 10, but the second finger goes back to the 9. And then finally on that string we're going to go from 10 to 12, but back to 10 with the first finger. Okay, we're now going to shift back. Purely, we're going to drop to the B string and we're going to slide from 8 to 10, third finger, then back to the 8 with the first finger, and then similar to a section we did earlier on, we're going to go on the E string now from the 10 to the 12 before finally hitting that 8 on the B again. Okay, so let's go back a bit. While you're there, keep that first finger, or let that first finger go flat, so it's still at 8, but it's going to get the E and the B, and we're going to hit both strings and do a quick hammer on from 8 to 10, but just on the B string with your third finger. So you're hitting both notes, and so you want to make sure that as that note hammers on, it doesn't cut off the E string. Okay, so you get this nice little kind of, well, chordal little riff. We're going to drop now to, first finger's going to go to 7 on the G, second finger's going to play that 8 on the B, and we're going to do a similar idea, but physical shape difference obviously, where I'm going to hit these two strings, the 7 on the G, the 8 on the B, that's what I'm going to strike now with the plectrum, and the third finger's going to hammer on in the same way as the previous section to the 9 on the G, and then I'm going to come off again. Okay. And then get my little finger over to 10 on the D. Okay, so we'll get this. Now as you go for that 10 on the D, you can let the pressure come off the previous two fingers, you know, that you were playing, the G and the B, just so you don't get too muggy. Like that. Okay. Okay, so that was basically G, sliding up to 14 with my second finger, crossing over to 13 on the B with the first finger, and then my third finger getting 15 on the B, 2 full bends. The second one, you know, put a bit of vibrato on if you're going to do your rock and roll face where you look like you're in pain, as I realise I do quite often when I do bends. That's a good note to do it on. Okay, simple section, sounds great. Okay, we're then going to follow that into the last section, where we're going to go Okay, now that is literally a slide from 15 to 17 on the B, cross over to 15 on the E, and then I'm going to play the 17 on the E, but as a full bend, release and pull off, all one pluck. Okay. Okay, just watch the timing there. Then I'm going to come back to the B, I'm going to hit fret 17 on the B, and I'm going to pull off from the 17 to the 15, back onto the 17, cross over to the 15 on the E, and hammer on to 17 and pull off back to the 15, and that completes the main part of the solo. Okay, and then it comes to the main riff. So we're gonna go. Okay, and that's basically 7 on the G, played twice. I'm gonna pluck it a third time, but this one's gonna be the start of a sweep picking passage. You know, sweep pickings where you cross from one string to the next. It can be multiple strings, but at least one to the next with a continuous motion. It can be down or up, depending, obviously, which way you're going. But in this case, we're going down from the 7 on the G to the 5 on the B, and that 5 on the B is then going to continue into a hammer on to the 7 and also to the 8. So with one kind of continuous motion, sweep down and hammer on into there. Okay, you might find you need to do a little bit of dampening on that 7 on the G just as you go into the sweep. It's, you know, you may find a tendency that it seems to make a kind of chord. So you've got to keep this note dampened a little bit. Obviously not on the first 2 plucks. Okay, so after we've got to the 8, we then play the 5 on the B, the 7 on the B, but we're going to go from 7 on the B to 7 on the G. So as I play the 7 on the B, I actually get my finger ready. It looks like I'm fretting, well, I am fretting 2 notes, but I'm only playing the B, the 7 on the B, and then, so that's going to go. That then allows me to just roll up the finger, so I end up getting the 7 on the G, and I don't want to get this chord effect, so again the pressure coming off the B is quite important. And then finally go back to the fret 5 on the B and slide up to the 8. Okay, so it does that whole section 3 times. And then we get the final part. Okay, so that's basically a slide to 0 from pretty much fret 7. So it's really, to slide to 0, you're going to slide off, kind of long slide. You don't want it to sound like that, so nice and quick and smooth. So you kind of come off, but you pull off, perhaps when you're about fret 1 or fret 2. If I did it slow, it'll sound a little bit strange. So you can slide down, come off, but you do your best to make that sound nice and smooth. And then you re-pluck that 0, so you get, and then a final pluck on that 0 on the G, which is going to hammer on to 2 and then 4. Okay, cross over to 3 on the B, and then we're going to play 0, 2, 0, 4, 0. You might want to give it a tidgy bend, you know, like a micro bend, just to give it that little bluesy rock kind of little to the end. Now, the original, you know, when this was played back in 1973 on the original record, it was played on a Stratocaster, Fender Strat. I'm an Otelli, and you may notice there's no trem on a Telecaster, so at the end you get, you know, the open note is just kind of, the trem's kind of bounced a little bit, so you get the, well, this sound. But obviously what I'm doing here is I'm just stretching the string just past the note. So I'm getting. So it just lets you get that effect. Okay, and that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching.